So thank you very much, Yves. I think it has become evident that the concept of VET is quite a heterogeneous one, depending on actually from which perspective you talk about it. So it's actually the issue of the concept. It's also the question, will we ever be able, what Yves was referring to have quite a European homogeneous VET system, or will it continue to be national VET systems? We saw the different perspectives with respect to unemployment. So it's true, there are some models, there are some best practice examples. We will hear about it also later on. But in the end, what is very important, and what Yves also said, is that we have to also focus on the skills. So what are the skills the labor market is looking forward to? What are the skills the sectors are looking forward to? So when it comes to, let's say, labor market strategies, we very often see that young people are being trained for a profession for which in the end they will not find a job. That is very often true for the academic professions. But very much so, more and more, when we refer to, let's say, VET in the field of trades and crafts and so on, that is something that our European societies have seen it is of utmost importance. So there is one challenge: fight unemployment through the right VET initiatives, whether we talk about initial VET, continuous VET, or what have you. So there's different options and so on. I would like you now to raise your voice if you have any questions with respect to what Yves said. The floor is now yours, and then Yves is here to respond to your questions. And I think what we can do is that we write down your questions, and then Yves will answer them. Okay?
We've seen that the last years Europe tries to impose a common framework in Europe, the European framework for the vocational training. Some new terminology have been introduced to various member states, like units, credits, easy VETs, as we call them in colleges. But we've seen that this system, despite the fact that it has been discussed and adapted quite a lot of years now, has not proceeded almost at all in South Europe, in Eastern Europe, and actually in most places in Europe hasn't proceeded at least as long as we want it. Why do you think this happens? Why do you think it's so difficult, member states, to apply this system with the 8 levels? Do you think that it's against what we're used so far? Why do you think it's member states of EU have failed somehow to apply this system so far?
Yes, thank you for the question. Because the skills with 8 levels is used all over Europe with some difficulties, but you know probably that in France it's not the same skills. It's a 6th level, but on the reverse. So that in order that everyone can understand, I know that you know that, but level 1 to 8, it's ECVET skills. And in France, it's level 6 to 1. 1 is equal to level 7 and 8 on the European system. So it is an example to answer to you that something is wrong because we don't use the same system when we apply what we want to do in our own country. So you are right that we have a lot of agencies that gives us a framework in Europe, quality, ESCO, qualification, and so on and so on. And it works for each agency very well, but we need today something in common to have a new step in order to coordinate all of that and to organize vet system, common vet system in Europe. So your question is a double question. First, why is it so difficult? And secondly, why it doesn't work so well, mainly in the South Europe countries? To my opinion, is that it is difficult because our educational system, vet system, are very well linked with our national state system in each member state. And we need it to keep it because it's the way we see economy, we see our skills, we see in our country how to do a career and to be recognized. And I know that because, for example, when we talk about that in France, it's impossible to talk. I said to my colleague from France, it's very difficult to talk in English about that because obviously in France, when you talk about education, you must talk in French. And sometimes, I guess it's the same in each country. So we see that education is very well linked with languages, with the way we express ourselves. I think for the new generation, because they speak more English, I think the English is a common language. I'm not only for the ideology of English everywhere, but I can see that it's our common language. So we need a common language. It's difficult for that because this language in English is not so good. But for training, it's enough if we want to organize a European policy. We can see it in each meeting in Europe, in each project we have, and each of us can understand, even if you don't talk French and I don't talk your language, but we can try to communicate like that. And in the labor market, this language and this kind of education could be enough and will be better for the next decades. The second question is about the countries, what we say in the south. I do believe that things are not, how do you say that, natural, how do you say that? It's a factor of history, and we need in Europe to organize the vet system everywhere, but we have to say also for, excuse me, my friend, but sometimes in project, when we talk about vet, our friends from the north of Europe said, just apply dual system. And some people in the south said, okay, we are going to do it. We can see they don't do it, or when they do it, it doesn't work. So things are not only on the formal definitions. I think the good definition for vet in Europe, in all the countries, is to understand that the labor market, the way we are free because we work, because we have qualification, is the way we learn how to be qualified for the job we want to do. And we need to make more mobility in Europe, to make more internship in Europe, etc., etc. It will be a long-term organization. But if we don't have the same policy, it's a beginning with the policy of vet, in fact. So we need to be very patient for that.
Okay. Does this respond a little bit to what you asked? No. Okay. No. Maybe I can add a little bit, if I may do so, within the context of the European qualifications framework, as it is called. You know that the member states are asked to develop their national frameworks. Where it is working quite well is the level 6 to 8, because that is the Bologna process, as you know. So we have the bachelor's, the master's degrees. There we have that kind of a homogeneous approach. So somebody that has studied in Lisbon, he has a bachelor's degree in business administration, would find it easier now with a certificate to find a job in whatever, Sweden or Finland. But it is true, when it comes to specifically the level 5, is that in many countries it's university level. In some countries is coming from Germany, I know that it's applied university level, so it is not the scientific one, but it's more the dual approach of it. And there we find a quite heterogeneous situation. And of course, the same is also true with respect to the other levels, but the general, let's say, skills and competences that are marked there are, if you have a look at it, really very general. And then it needs to be translated, what Yves said, into the various individual culturally different systems that we have in Germany. So that is just something I wanted to add. And I fear that we now have to go on with our next speakers. Otherwise, we run a little bit out of time. I know that Panos told me if I do not finish at 7 or let's say some minutes before, it doesn't matter, but I try to be punctual anyway. So we already have here on the screen the presentation that was prepared by Tilak Dharmaratne from Sri Lanka. So I'm very happy that we have him here. This organization is also a member of the EVBB, so I'm very happy that we made it. And I think that you have some very interesting information about the different approaches concerning education and VET in a number of southeastern countries. So you have the floor.